Hi, everybody. I'm Diane Brady. I'm here with Tamer Masudin, who is a Bedouin Arab Israeli whose friends were among the casualties of the Hamas attack, and obviously is still living with this tragedy. Tamer, thank you very much for joining us. I'm
Thank you so
curious
much.
about the mood right now in Israel. I'm catching you on a day where a number of hostages have apparently been freed. Has that changed much?
I have to admit that so far the atmosphere here in Israel and also in my local community, we're still in a state of shock and fear and a tremendous amount of anger and disbelief in what happened to us. I think yesterday and the day before that, we saw on social media and different platforms, videos, pictures, gruesome pictures, very graphic pictures of the things that happened near the Gaza border to the civilians that stayed there. And it's a true tragedy. And if anything that is good that came out of it is that we now know, and everybody else in the world know how Hamas truly is and what kind of truly vile organization we are dealing with.
Let me ask you, and I was remiss not to say at the start, first of all, again, my sympathies. It must be a very hard time for you. Tell us a little bit about what happened where you live.
Perfect. So I live in Segev Shalom. Segev Shalom is a small Bedouin village, Bedouin mostly habited in Israel. I would say it's between 45 minutes to an hour away from the Gaza border. It's a very peaceful community, very loving community that I come from. And over the past, let me just go back. It was on Saturday when the first attack happened and when Hamas basically infiltrated the border. There were sirens. At the time, I was staying with my partner in the center, and she woke me up at 7, between 6 and 7 in the morning, and she told me there are sirens outside in the house. And the first thought that came into my mind wasn't that we were being attacked, wasn't that there was missiles coming. The first thing that came into my mind is that wait, isn't Remembrance Day, because usually in Remembrance Day there's a sirens outside and people stand for a minute. Um, what's happening? Then I opened Facebook and I opened on the news, and I opened my phone, I opened Twitter, and I saw what is happening, and I saw that the first images and videos from Sderot, one of the major cities next to the Gaza border. And I saw a couple of terrorists riding a Toyota pickup truck, driving with a machine gun and firing at people live rounds. And I couldn't believe it. I thought it might be, an old video of ISIS that been spreading around in the media. Then I called my parents and I called my brother. My brother, he is 18. Recently had a liver transplant in Paris, and he was recovering. And he wanted to visit some family members who lived in Sderot. So at the time, he was locked in Sderot, and I was terrified because, my
That's
brother.
closer to the border.
Yes, yes, it's if I'm not mistaken, it's between 20 to 30 minutes away from the border. And I was extremely terrified because he can't run, he can't hide, he can't, jump, and he can't do anything with in his condition. He just needed to rest and recover. And then obviously I saw also the fact that the terrorists not only killing Jews, Israeli Jews that in the area, or soldiers even to say the least, but they also kill Arabs and Bedouins. I was
And
in disbelief when I saw this. Then I saw the numbers and the names, and in my community in Segev Shalom, we had lost one individual who was on reserve in the army at the time. He was 41, and the day he passed. And also we lost two police officers from Segev Shalom that were engaging in the fight in Sderot. And the first thing that came into my mind is how the hell can I get my brother out of Sderot as fast, as quickly as possible?
how is your brother doing now?
Now he's better. Now he's finally out of Sderot. He had an escort. He was escorted by military personnel from Sderot to Segev Shalom, It's not like it's safer there because there's still the threat of missiles. And when I talked to my parents on the phone, they told me that people are afraid to go out in the street because there is a feeling that they are everywhere. And when I mean they, I mean the terrorists and the Hamas militants, that they are everywhere. They're roaming in the streets and no one wants to go outside. No one is safe. And it was truly a terrifying, it still is a terrifying week.
Well, people forget, of course, that Israel is a country with people of many religions,
Right,
ethnicities. I know it's referred to as the Jewish state, but you know that's been your home for you and your family for,
right,
I'm
right.
sure, many, many years. You know, one question I had is a lot of the coverage that we're hearing over here is, you know, pro-Palestine, pro-Israel, anti-Hamas, you know, of course. What what do you think is an important message to share in terms of talk a little bit about the state of things for you and your community prior to this horrific attack by Hamas?
I would say that prior to this horrific attack, my community was peaceful. You know, I sat with my parents a couple of weeks ago and we sat down because, again, my brother was still recovering, and we talked about how the state of the community is and how, for the first time since a long time, ever since the protests in Israel happened, seems like, you know, even though we're in the midst of chaos, things are still, you know, better. Things are still going good, and everybody was, you know, healing and recovering, especially in my family from what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say before that, you could even find a little bit of sympathy to the Palestinian cause among my community and among other Arab Israelis, I would say. And what happened is that when Hamas launched this and did what they did on the 7th of October, that even if they had even this thin line of sympathy to the Palestinian cause, if there ever was in my community, it was severed. It was disconnected. I see videos from people in my community that are extremely pissed, extremely angry. Some Bedouin soldiers went also to the fight, and also a couple of moments ago, I shared a video of them singing in their Arabic song, their native songs, while being in the helicopter, going to basically fight Hamas.
Do you see the Palestinian cause, as you phrase it, as being synonymous with Hamas? I mean, I would have thought maybe they were two different things.
Well, you would thought that it was two different things, but ever since Hamas was established and ever since 2006, when they took control over the Gaza Strip, they basically glued themselves to the Palestinian cause. Even though that we have the Palestinian Authority and the government of Israel cooperate with the Palestinian Authority, even though sometimes there are miscommunications or problems that happen between Israel and the Palestinian Authority, but still there's a lot of cooperation that happens on the scenes and behind the scenes to make sure that we can maybe one day come to a resolution of the situation that is called the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But ever since Hamas glued itself to the Palestinian cause as the rightful resistance to the so-called colonialism of Israel, they basically put their face in the front of the Palestinian cause, and they got funded mainly by Iran, also by Qatar to do their dirty works and also to get their weapons and money. And now all they do is basically shoot missiles at us and make sure that they kill us.
So does the destruction of Hamas necessitate the destruction of Gaza in your
I
mind?
don't no, I don't think that would be necessary. I think that even among the people in Gaza, there are people who don't like Hamas, who are not interested in the rule of Hamas. People who are interested in freedom and democracy as much as I do, as much as you do, and as much as the American audience is, and
Mm-hmm.
they want to live in peacefully. I think that it's very difficult right now to fight a terror organization that hide in hospitals and in schools and launch missiles from civilian areas. And I believe that the IDF in Israel as a state is doing the most it can to minimize the amount of civilian casualties in the Gaza side. But again, it's very difficult to fight evil, and there will
Or
always be side casualties.
And I know you obviously cannot speak for all Arab Israelis. That I don't expect you to, but in terms of the conversations that you're having and your own views, one thing I'm curious about is the response from Prime Minister Netanyahu and what you've seen. What's the conversation like there? Is it appropriate?
Well, it's funny because prior to that we had the May event in 2021 when you had different riots in mixed cities in Israel, and that was for different reasons, and everybody was afraid that in a state of a total war that Israel will engage in, then Israel would have to the IDF would have to worry about the mixed cities and the Arab cities in Israel, but so I don't know if it's by the grace of God or by people who live in the community who truly understood the gravity of the situation. It didn't happen, and from what I've seen from the people that I've talked to and the people I was engaging with, seems like even if they don't support Hamas or don't support the terror attacks that they're doing or don't engage in any social or activist group trying to promote Hamas or trying to say, oh, wow, this was a righteous act of a resistance group. Most of the people are trying, to stay silent and, to try to not be under the fire. And also, I saw a lot of the people in the Arab community that are helping the IDF and that are helping Israel. I'm talking about doctors, I'm talking about medics, I'm also talking about other civilian workers. I saw in a Druze village up in the north, people came and helped and sent aid to the IDF. And I think that if anything good came out of this situation is that it glued the Israeli society back together.
I think that's a good point. When you think about your own identity, where does Israeli fall in that?
Well, I always said I'm Israeli. I'm also Israeli Arab. Arabic is my mother tongue. I'm also Muslim, although I'm a secular one, but I truly believe. For me, it felt like all of these identities are intertwined and combined together. And never in my time that I felt it was separate. Wherever I went, I told them, proud Israeli. Israel is my country. I love my country. It's complicated indeed. Its democracy isn't perfect as any democracy in the Western world, but I would rather live in it and work in it and trying to improve it than anywhere else. And I think it's something to state for.
May I ask another question, which is that one of the terms that I hear used a lot about Gaza in particular is open air prison. Is that the perception among the Arab community in Israel? And it's not a leading question. I'm genuinely curious.
I think it really depends on who are you talking to inside the Arab
What's
Israeli
your view?
community, obviously. In my point of view, I don't think it's a prison rather than a containment, not for the Palestinians inside of the Gaza Strip, but rather the terrorist groups that inside the Gaza Strip, mainly the Islamic Jihad and Hamas. For example, prior to this attack, we had workers that came from Gaza, Palestinian workers who worked inside of Israel, inside of factories. For example, my mom works in one of the factories in Israel next to my region. And I know for a fact there are many Gaza citizens that work in that factory and come back. So I wouldn't say it's a prison, but it's a containment for the terrorist groups that
What's
are
the
inside of Gaza.
difference between containment and prison? Again, I think it's a perception that is widely held, and I just would love to get some sense of nuance around it from where you sit.
Perfect. Well, basically, a prison is there to punish someone who did something wrong, to punish someone who did a terrible thing or committed a crime. I don't think that the people inside of the Gaza Strip, all of them committed a crime either against Israelis or against humans in general. But I think the people that they have in their leadership right now, whether it's Hamas or the Islamic Jihad, mean no, they're not interested in any peaceful resolution. They're not interested if any, reaching a settlement or reaching an agreement with the state of Israel. And it's a way for us and for them also to make sure that we don't engage in any other, unnecessary conflicts between each other. You saw what happened when the border between Israel and Gaza got collapsed in the matter of a couple of hours around. according to different estimates, 1,000 between 120 and 5,000, terrorists managed to infiltrate and kill Israelis. Imagine if we didn't have the security borders between each other, what would happen?
Well, that's a good point. And let me, kind of end where I started, which is now we have seen a number of hostages freed. Does that give you optimism that the war might not be as long as people had anticipated even a few days ago?
Well, I don't know how many hostages got freed. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Hamas estimates that they have around 100 captured individual citizens and army personnel inside of Gaza. My hope that all of them would be released, all of them would be free without any conditions, without any rules, because their capture isn't justified by any means. No civilians or elderly should be captured in such a state of war because they're not involved. If it was a case of combatant, then someone might understand, and there's like, a discussion between the different sides and way in how we can do this and how we can exchange prisoners or something like that. But in this situation, it's just
You don't
unjustified.
sound optimistic.
Well, you'd be surprised. I'm highly optimistic. I'm extremely optimistic, mainly because I truly believe in the people in Israel. And when I mean the people, I mean also the Arabs and the Jews and the Christians and the Muslims alike. Because during this time of war, we saw a tremendous amount of support, and basically everybody pitched in. If I'm not mistaken, the percentage of the people that went to the reserve crossed the 150%, which is insane. The amount of people that came in for their duty, for their country, and the amount of people who volunteered and did great work, the amount of activists are online to trying to promote and let the world see the horrific images and things that are happening that happen inside of Israel. And so I am optimistic. I think, but as any war, there are going to be casualties. It's going to be a very painful process, but I am optimistic that eventually we will prevail for the better of the Israeli society and also the Palestinians.
Okay. Listen, thank you very much. And, our hearts go out to you, of course, your family, and the people of, all the innocent people who are being impacted by this. So thank you for your time and for sharing your
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.